Dunebrook is a child advocacy center. Its motto is every child safe, healthy, happy. And that is a genuine feeling. So from the prevention and intervention sides, coming together for the whole of the child.
Somebody hurting you in any part of your body or any way is never your fault, and you would never be in trouble for what happened.
Whatever it takes, supporting parents, helping them do what they need to do to be better parents. It's said that we learn to parent from our parents. I was a victim advocate in the prosecuting attorney's office, and as part of that, I belonged to a child abuse advisory team, C.A.A.T. People didn't acknowledge child abuse or children's issues in our community. They denied it.
Yeah. But that would seem to be what was happening in all the communities around here, around everywhere. Nobody wanted to nobody wanted to realize that kids really were being abused until we started talking about it and we shared our own stories of abuse. I kind of liken it to someone who for a long time, years ago, or last week, was raped and never wanted to talk to anybody about it because they blamed themselves. And child abuse is a lot like that. And for myself, as being a young child, I didn't know how to tell my parents. I didn't know what words to use.
And one of my jobs as an advocate was I would get all the Child Protective Service reports. One of the things I became aware of in that process was that the police in those substantiated cases weren't necessarily aware of those reports. So I would call the Child Protective Service, the caseworker, and say, I see this, and I don't see a conclusion, like this is the initial report. What's happened?
Right.
And they were waiting for the police. So then I'd figure out which jurisdiction, and I would go to the police, and they'd say, no, Child Protective Services handled it. That kind of just pointed out the problem that the two weren't talking to each other.
In the early 1990s, the late 1980s, when law enforcement we lived in silos, I hate to admit it, but we didn't like to share information, we didn't like to work as part of a team.
What was happening was if there was a case where a child needed to be interviewed, the child would be interviewed first by the police officer and then by the DCS worker and then by the prosecutor.
I worked on a case where they did not send that child to a forensic interviewer. And wow, what a mistake that was. That child ended up giving so many different statements because so many people were asking her so many different types of questions that we really just couldn't figure out in the end what had happened.
We like to go it on our own, but we realized that we could be so much more effective if we worked as a team and we relied on the expertise of others, and it would help to make our chain much stronger when our links all came together.
Really was no interview place. Or you could take a child, they would take a child to a police station if it was really severe. None of those places were the best places for a child to go.
Well, this is a neutral site, and previously interviews such as this may have been conducted in the child's home, sometimes where the offense had occurred and it brought back painful memories for the child. They didn't necessarily, although law enforcement was present, didn't feel safe. Sometimes it would happen within the confines of a hospital, and it's a very sterile environment, and children are always, or any victim of any crime is fearful that maybe somebody was overhearing them. It's not the most conducive place to conduct an interview because you have hospital staff coming and going from that. Sometimes it would be done in a police department interview room, and sometimes that can be intimidating for a child as well.
And then there was the case in LaPorte. The police officer, who is a wonderful officer, good at interviewing suspects, good at interviewing witnesses, had no idea how to interview a child, didn't know how to talk to a 5-, 6-year-old about sexual things. He was so uncomfortable. But he was taping this interview, so which he would do with all. It was hard to see the child because he was so little, but as the interview progresses, you see the child slip down off of the chair and under the desk. By the time that case went to trial, the child was like a professional talking about child abuse, because he had been that's what people talked to him about. It was just awful. And it was I feel like that was the rallying cry, that we've got to do this better.
There are several of the police officers, a couple of them, Tom Howe and Al Christensen, who they really listened to us and they became very concerned. They had young children, and Al.
So he had seen something about a child abuse, a training in Huntsville, Alabama, and the prosecutor, who was Skip Chapala at the time, agreed to send a group of us out to Huntsville,
Alabama.
They had an advocacy center. They're like the Mecca for child abuse prevention. And they did, so the training was phenomenal. It was about multidisciplinary teams. It was encouraging prosecution. It was a different way of thinking about child abuse, that it just didn't belong to the family. You couldn't do just whatever you wanted to a child. That child had rights, which is what I got out of that. And I loved the idea of working together, and we all did. We came back with a fire in our bellies, including Bill Herbach. So he gets on, we all come back talking about this multidisciplinary team intervention, police officers and child protective service people working together, interviewing a child together initially, pairing up. So we came back with, oh, that sounds like a great plan. We were all for it.
When we were in Huntsville, we found out that there was a plea agreement, and that's how they initially got the beginning home for the child, for the advocacy center.
Huntsville.
At Huntsville. That's how they got their place started, on a plea agreement where the man
child molester.
a child molester had to turn over his home. That was part of and so Bill thought that was kind of, he really latched onto that. He thought that was a good thing.
And he had a case.
And he had a case like that.
He took some heat about that plea agreement because the person didn't do a lot of jail time.
No.
But it ended up with, we received a house that was worth maybe $40,000 or $50,000. That was the seed money.
He could sell that house, sold that house.
So the plea agreement was that house was turned over to the LaPorte County Child Abuse Prevention Council, which is what we had become. And we had determined that there was a space on Johnson Road that is between where Dunebrook is now and the city limits. That would be the ideal spot. And we stopped at a lot of places and asked people if they would be willing to
sell
their property. Well, I would have never done that. I mean, it took a businessman to figure that piece out.
But we ended up buying a house.
We ended up
approaching
Charlie Morgan.
His house was for sale.
Yeah.
And he sold it to us.
So then about that time, Oprah Winfrey was living in LaPorte County. People really tuned into her. So I wrote her a letter.
Child abuse is one of the greatest problems confronting our children today.
And the next thing I know, I got a call from her partner, Mr. Jacobs, and said, Miss Winfrey will give you $50,000 as a challenge grant. You have to raise 50, and she'll give you the 50. You can advertise that she's giving it to you. You can use her name. And she would do a video. She did a video for us.
It is only by working together can we fight against child abuse. And in LaPorte County, Dunebrook is my community's way of uniting in that fight. I have, along with many others here, joined together, each participating in our own way, a different way, to make Dunebrook a reality and our community just a little safer for children.
With that, we were off and running. Glenn kind of oversaw the construction. At that point, Ton and Blank came into the picture, and Joe Core.
I got involved when they did the first remodel of the existing insulation company that was here. We came in them days, and that was 30-some years ago, 35 years ago. And we remodeled the inside of the old insulation building and turned it into Dunebrook, which meant some offices and an entry and things that weren't there before we started.
He's the Energizer Bunny. He worked all the time. He was amazing.
He got other people to be as energized as he was.
Right.
This is my 27th year at Dunebrook. So when I got here, it was pretty small. There were only a few employees. And it was in the very small building before we built this current building. So it was like a converted house.
But at that time, Dunebrook was just in the house that it originally was located. And it was decided that we really needed more room. We just didn't have the ability to expand and do those things, like have offices for a trained interviewer.
We got so busy that the rooms that were used as offices and interview space were the classrooms at night.
And this room is for older children. It's also used as a waiting room at times and a classroom for meetings. All of our rooms at Dunebrook are multi-purpose.
We'd have to take the parenting stuff down to the basement during the day, and then for the evening parenting classes, we'd have to haul those up the steps.
They got growing pains probably about 10, 12 years later, and they wanted to put an addition on the existing building and remodel the existing building. So I came out and with Diane Didke's help and a board, I put a proposal together, and I think when I put the proposal together, I kind of shocked their board.
All I remember specifically is $1 million. And of course, so my conservative, was like, oh my God, that's so much money, But he was like, no, it'll be in 3 parts, and you'll be able to handle this. And so it's kind of a leap of faith that we went with it. Joe was absolutely right. We were able to do that, and the funding, we could get the funding as we went along.
John Gilmore and myself from Ton of Blank, we took the proposal and broke it into 3 phases. One was to remodel the existing building, that's where it started. And the other one was to put on the kind of the southeast addition towards LaPorte. And if we were really fortunate, we'd put on the northwest addition, which is the training room to the north of us.
And he would come and get me and take me out to beg for dollars, and he opened doors. He was amazing.
Well, during the expansion, we did work from the building while they built around us. They built it in stages so we could do that. Work from home wasn't a concept then, so everybody still came to the office and still did what they needed to do.
It was a lot of work, but it was amazing to see the way so many community people really came out and helped. I mean, we would be there every weekend with a host of volunteers. Larry Figueres was cooking meals, incredible meals. I mean, you wanted to work there just to get one of Larry's meals, seriously.
We had to create the new expansion to the south, which created all the offices for all these employees and more. It was larger than what they needed. We built it for future. So then we got back to the old building. When we decided to remodel that, we had the funds for it. Then we had to turn around and take that building down manually, by hand.
You had electricians, you had Ton and Blank, state police were in there. Like I said, Mary and I were in there knocking down walls.
So that was a value that led us into being able to do the 3rd phase, which is the meeting room to the north of us.
Diana Dipke's husband and I painted the back meeting room together. It's just, it was so neat to see so many people in the community being willing to invest their time and come out, give up their Saturday, and just make that thing happen.
When you walk into Dunebrook, there's an atmosphere, and that atmosphere is not by mistake. It's intentional. You walk into a space that has been created to elevate your mood, and you're greeted first by somebody who is genuinely happy to see you. When you walk in and you see the living room of Dunebrook, the way it's bright and cheery, every single color of paint on the walls was thought through by the people that designed this interior. The fireplace, the tiles, the books, everything there is intentional for an atmosphere that helps you feel surrounded by hope and surrounded by everything good. That's what you come into, and that's what is pervasive through this whole building. And on any day at Dunebrook, there's things going on that span the extremes of emotion, from extreme happiness to extreme sadness and everything in the middle. And everything is done with intention. And that intention is what I refer to as a Dunebrook standard. That standard that the community has come to expect from things that are supported by Dunebrook, programs that Dunebrook provides, even the interactions that we have with people that stop by.
So this is what we call our toddler room. So whenever we've got the littles in here for healthy families, they'll have their play dates in here, or the C.A.A.C will utilize it to bring in families that they're speaking with that have really little ones. That way they can play while the family talks.
Well, they started the Dunebrook as having two parts, the intervention and the prevention. So we had the nurturing parenting group. It was the prevention piece. That was our first program for that. So it's where the families would come for parenting classes, but the kids would come too, and they were part of the curricula, and they did family activities and things together. We still do that program. And then they got Healthy Families as another prevention program.
So my sister, she's 8 years older than me, and she had Healthy Families with my niece. So I think I was like a freshman in high school, and all I remember is this lady coming in, and she had like these activities and things like that, and I just felt like it was like awesome. I was like, what, you have a job? You can play with babies all day?
Healthy Families is a free, confidential program. It is offered to women prenatally or with a child less than 3 months old.
And we come to their house, we meet them where they're at. We bring activities to do with baby that helps build their brain and their development, as well as the bond that they have with their parent. And then we support them in all the challenges of parenthood, like anything that they might be struggling with, anything that they're looking for affirmation on, or just someone to tell the news that they're pregnant. Folks have a lot of opinions about parenting, and not everyone grows up in a family where they feel comfortable going to someone that was their caregiver to ask for advice on how to be a caregiver. But we all know, like, from how we were raised, what we liked about that experience and what helped us and prepared us, and those memories that we cherish, and what things about our experience growing up we might want to do differently with our own kids.
When I would shadow the Healthy Families representatives going into homes and being with a family, and how they teach resilience and being a positive, parent, and just little teeny things they would do. And it was no judgment. That is, I think, why they were so successful.
Being able to be a part of Healthy Families, the program when we decided that bringing breastfeeding support into the homes, being able to offer the home visitors training to become breastfeeding specialists, how that would impact families, and seeing that start to take shape now.
The program has helped just me gain so much knowledge and just feel so secure and comfortable with being a mom, and not as alone. Before I came a mom, I thought I knew everything about being a mom, and then I had him and I knew nothing. And I don't have a big outside support system. So coming here for the first time for a breastfeeding group, I had tons of questions. My baby was a preemie. He wasn't gaining much weight. So I had doctors pushing formula, which I did not want to do. And my first breastfeeding event, I had so many moms encouraging me to keep going with the breastfeeding, and it ended up working out. They just helped me so much in the beginning. I would not have made it the first year without the Dunebrook moms and the Healthy Family helpers. They saved us, huh?
We've added an outreach coordinator, so she is able to plan all of the fun events that families can come to free in the community. So it's really been about building those community connections. A lot of times moms or dads, parents come and they don't really have the connection to the community, or maybe don't know a lot of other moms in the community. So we can help bridge that by connecting them, having fun play dates at parks, monthly breastfeeding support group. We have a Grow with Dunebrook series where we do nutrition information.
There are warning signs telling us that somebody or something could be dangerous. No one wants to talk about abuse, and we don't want to acknowledge sometimes even that it exists. I became interested in the body safety program, so at one point I was doing nurturing parenting, but also going into the schools and teaching abuse prevention with the focus mainly on sexual abuse prevention, but just kind of talking to kids in general about, empowering them to understand that their bodies belong to them, what's the difference between a safe touch and unsafe touch, but most importantly, who safe adults are and how to access help. My passion is having those uncomfortable conversations and helping kind of take away that stigma that exists, because that's part of the problem. Is if we don't talk about it, if we let that stigma continue to thrive, then that's how children stay unsafe.
I think believing a child is important. A lot of people think that they have to determine if the child is lying, if this is something that's actually going on. They might feel that they have to investigate themselves and get all the details. But it really is, if a child comes to you and tells you that something like this is happening, it really is up to the professionals to look into it. So law enforcement, Department of Child Services, and they're the ones that can determine the next steps and if something has to go forward. And what we know is that only about 2% of reports that are investigated are what we would call a false report, or something that maybe was not enough for involvement with services, or they didn't have enough information.
When a child has made a report of abuse to law enforcement or Department of Child Services, or has made an outcry to somebody has made a report to Department of Child Services or law enforcement, they will coordinate to have that child come in for a forensic interview. This is our interview room where we meet with the child. So the forensic interviewer will sit here and the child will sit in here. There is a camera behind the mirror, and so that there's not a camera kind of right in their face. We also have a bird's eye camera, so when we have little ones that are kind of all over the room, we see them throughout there's no blind spots within the room. We keep it very sparse and simple, so there's not a lot of distractions.
We do interviews between 2 and 17 years old, and a caregiver typically comes with. So my role is, while the child is being interviewed, I talk with the family. So if you go to the prosecutor's office, they're victim advocates. The difference is that I'm a family advocate. So it's not just working with the child, I work more with the caregivers. Help them understand the dynamics of abuse, behaviors they might see, and really help them understand that the event is part of their history, and it will always be part of their history, but it doesn't have to rule or direct their future.
This is the multidisciplinary team room where we, law enforcement, Department of Child Services, our family advocates, and the interviewer will discuss the allegation and start sharing information that all the team members have gathered up to this point.
With the family services part of my job, I'm up front with all of the families. And there are a lot of times, especially if they're coming into the C.A.A.T, where they're coming in for one of the worst days of their lives. And being able to make any kind of positive impact on their day is it's just the best.
The staff is like none other. You know, obviously child abuse prevention and intervention is extremely difficult. The nature of the beast is difficult. So anyone who chooses that job has a big heart.
Every person here at Dunebrook is dedicated to the mission. A place like Dunebrook and the things that happen here, it's not something that you can just come in and go through the motions, to be honest. You do have to have some dedication to what you're doing. A lot of the people here with their job hear things, are involved in the healing process for families when there has been child abuse, and that's incredibly difficult, but they're able to put the child and the family and their needs first, and then have the knowledge of themselves to know what they need to do to come in the next day to be able to do that again.
We all do this for a reason, right? I have my own history, you know, so I feel that everything that I've done up until this point, there was a reason for it, or anything that happened in my life, that there's a reason for it, because I'm here. And hopefully I could, you know, impart some knowledge or help with how to navigate a path they never thought they'd walk through.
One of the things that is so important for a place like Dunebrook is to value the people that are here and to value the work that's being done and to make sure that every person feels valued and that what they do is appreciated. We can't just be an employer here, we have to be more than that because we ask a lot of the people here.
I hope that we're starting to move the idea of parenting to be that it's not something that just has to happen behind closed doors. There's people who are doing great jobs, and we observe these people in the community and we're like, what are they doing? Well, they'll tell you what they're doing if you ask. And so our parenting classes are a group setting, and often the facilitator doesn't do a whole lot of instructing. It's not a college class, it's not a high school class, it's a discussion like this of here's the topic, here's a couple facts about the topic, whether it be development or brain development, what's going on in the brain, or regulating emotions. And then the parents talk amongst each other and the facilitator guides that discussion. So I think parents kind of open up more about what they're struggling with parenting, and it starts out as vulnerable, but then when they find that they're saying, oh, I'm struggling with getting my kid to get their shoes on in the morning, and everyone in the room is like, oh my gosh, yes, it's so hard with shoes. It's validating to the parent that they're not doing anything especially wrong.
Heather Taylor, who's the Director of Parent and Family Education, I think she's really innovative and progressive in delivering a program that is helping parents build their parenting skills as they're working towards sobriety. Oftentimes we think of those as two separate issues, substance use and parenting, but they need to work together. A parent who struggled with substance use cannot return to parenting in the same way that they did while in active use. And meanwhile, they have to rebuild the relationships with the children that may have been destroyed or endangered during that time of active use. So I think that's really progressive, and she's done a phenomenal job in bringing that to light to funders, that it can be effective working together as well.
Some of our classes, the parents are not there on a voluntary basis. They're voluntold. That comes with its level of distrust. In those cases, the parents don't have their children in their care, and so there's a lot of turmoil. They might not feel that it was just that they lost their children. And hearing the staff come back and say that so-and-so is really understanding how substances impacted their parenting and having steps to move forward. They're just so proud that they've begun to share and they've begun to digest the information in the classes. My own household is a testament that it works. When I left, I was expecting a child, and so I was raising a child with some of the knowledge that I had with facilitating nurturing parenting, but it wasn't in the front of my mind. I kind of knew some of the things that I should be doing. And then the twos hit, and those were hard, and the threes hit, and those were hard too. And by the time I came back, I had a 5-year-old. Came back to Dunebrook, I had a 5-year-old, and was going through some of these curriculums and remembering and seeing, oh my gosh, like I created whatever situation is happening here, but I can also fix it. So my household has become so much more calm.
It's very rare that the majority of people think that parenting would evolve, that there would actually be updates in how you parent based off of research on childhood development, on the development of an infant, but there is. And so just because you parent differently than what you were raised, people around you shouldn't take offense to that. They should think, this is great, you're keeping up with new trends, just like I brought my daughter home from the hospital in a car seat. It was required. I didn't take offense to the fact that I wasn't brought home in a car seat. That just wasn't something that was at the time known or thought to be a hazard. So if we can change the perspective of the fact that parenting techniques, things that have to do with raising children have changed, and they constantly change. And Dunebrook is part of getting that message out. And all of this, anything that we talk about when it comes to good parenting, strong parenting, whatever it is that's associated with that, it's all under the guise of a healthy relationship with your children, a healthy relationship for you as a parent. The stress of being a parent, even when you have every resource available to you, you have neighbors, you have family, everybody feels that isolation. And the people that are willing to say, I need help, that's one of the bravest things you can do. And to think that you need to isolate yourself as a parent because you should have all the answers or it's not okay to ask for help, that's something else that we just have to get rid of, that stigma that there's anything wrong with asking for help.
If we don't know how to swaddle the baby, well, we're not born with that knowledge. Kids don't come with a handbook on how to raise them. And so having that discussion, an open discussion with parents on, you might feel frustrated. You might be in a situation where you don't know what to do and the child won't stop crying. That doesn't make you a bad parent. It's just, these are things that we can work on together. So that's always been great to hear whenever we're out and I tell someone what I do. Oh, Dunebrook, I know that place.
I feel like I'm a better parent for being here because I didn't know all of these things before I got here. And I'm the executive director and I'm fine with saying that because this is a place that has experts. So I just have the benefit of being at a place like that.
The biggest thing that I am kind of set out to do is to bring all of these different community partners together, that if we're looking at what contributes to preventing child abuse and neglect, we're looking at things like ensuring that families have safe and affordable housing. We're also looking at access to transportation, to healthy food, stress relief. And so looking at, do families have social connections? Do they have friends? Do they have someone that they can call if, they're just getting frustrated because their baby keeps crying and they need to take a 10-minute break? And so really looking at those things, who's doing that in the community, and then how do we all work together so that we're able to actually prevent abuse and neglect and not just react to it after the fact.
Giving somebody a fish and teaching someone when to fish, right? And I really look at that as Dunebrook is teaching these young kids and these young families how to fish, how to do it on their own, giving them safe places to do that. So it's not just correcting this issue now, it's correcting this issue for generations to come. And so when you look at spending your money wisely and giving of your money wisely, it's a very wise program to give to because of the long-lasting effects that it has.
The things that happen to children at a young age can have a lasting effect on them. It can affect them later on in their life, whether it comes to relationships. It could lead to drug abuse. It could lead to a life of crime, all because of some things that they happened to them as a child. And if we can prevent those things, even to the form of getting a person incarcerated, or that person also who is an offender sometimes needs some help. Sometimes that help comes in the way of incarceration initially, but they also need some help because you find that a lot of the offenders they have also been violated when they were younger, and they go on to continue that cycle. So I think what we have with Dunebrook is the ability to break those cycles.
And looking for trauma-focused therapists has been a huge gap within the community. There's just not many that will see children and see children because of sexual abuse trauma or physical abuse trauma. And so when that was happening, there just was nowhere for them to go. And in 2020, we contracted with outside therapists, and Dunebrook got them trained. So as through the Child Advocacy Center, we wrote some grants to have therapists trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy.
Last year, an amazing opportunity came through the Lilly Endowment to apply for a grant. And we were awarded $1 million, the largest grant that Dunebrook has obtained to date, to provide funding over the next 3 years to get us going with having an in-house therapist. So getting that program going, getting it started, designing it, and actually employing here at Dunebrook a therapist that is specific for the families that come through our Child Advocacy Center.
And in 2024, we are pleased to announce that our Child Advocacy Center has added an in-house therapist to the Advocacy Center and a mental health program. And so she is trained in what is called child family traumatic stress intervention, and she will also be trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. And she will meet with the families, hopefully a warm handoff from the advocates to the therapist the day that they are in here for the forensic interview, explain what the therapy services are. And families can come back here. They know where Dunebrook is, they know where the reception area is, they just are comfortable in this setting. And so we're hoping that the engagement into mental health for families will be a lot larger than if we were referring them out into the community.
Every not-for-profit has to do fundraisers, and they sometimes run their course.
Yes.
They run their course. They have a life of their own. You know, the dinner, the silent auctions, the live auctions, the dances, it does run its course. And Ted came back with this idea of dragon boat races.
It was an attempt, Susie, to try to have just some different kind of fundraiser. My husband and I and two very good friends, Margot and Steve Hale, had been in Canada for a short vacation. We saw dragon boats in Stratford, Ontario, and just thought it'd be a wonderful fundraiser, something new. So this year will be our 8th year. It's a real spirit builder, and so it's been a big part of the board.
He pushed and pushed, and we started it, and it was very successful the first year and raised a lot of money for Dunebrook.
We have some pretty good times coming here with this group. Dunebrook in lane 1, a short thing in lane 2, and Long Beach Country Club in lane 3. Lane number 1, we're going to have our defending champions.
35 years is incredible. There's people that are in our community that the kids were served by Dunebrook, and now they're adults. And I think our community's better for it.
Dunebrook has really been instrumental when it comes to some of our, worst child abuse cases, and having that safe space for children and their families to go to really share some of the darkest things that may have happened to them. And Dunebrook fills that void and that gap to make sure that they're safe and that they have a safe space. So there are no other organizations like that in this area, and that's why I've always supported them.
Listening to them and explaining how this is so much better than they ever had before, when they had to take them in the police department and they're already nervous and things that I was going through shortly after we completed that. I was served on a jury case, and that's what it was. It was a young girl that had been molested by somebody, and she had kept it quiet for, I think, as I remember it now, 9 years. And then she mentioned something she was 3 or 4 at the time, now she's 13, and she mentioned it to somebody at school, and they went to Dunebrook, And they sat her down and they got the entire story out of her. And then they arrested the person and there was a trial. And I thought, boy, you know, I could just see her sitting in that room. And, you know, they put her to ease and things and got the story out of her so that they could charge this individual. So to me, that was just, it just sticks with me.
You don't get federal grants unless you have your act together. So they were able to do everything from the finances to the actual building to the program to the recruiting and training of their employees. I mean, they're a model nonprofit.
It's like a lot of pieces are just falling into place, and it's everything from new programs that we're looking at, new programs that we're actually in the midst of spinning up. It's just exciting. We're moving beyond what we've always just done. We're adding in different facets, and it's really becoming more of a holistic approach of how we're, you know, encompassing the families that we serve and really the entire community.
We're really out to seek to even bring more people to our property with disabilities that Dunebrook can educate, more families to our properties of people with intellectual disabilities that Dunebrook can educate in their different services that they have. And I think that can really start an entire movement, because I think people with intellectual disabilities, children specifically, at times are forgotten that they're also at risk for the same things that Dunebrook is out to. And to tell you the truth, a lot of times they're even more vulnerable than other children. And so it's educating families on what to look for. Some of my friends are nonverbal. What should families be looking for in terms of behavior changes? What should families be looking, you know, all of these things. And so to build this extensive and comprehensive program, even just specifically for people with disabilities, I know that Dunebrook is open to the more children, the more families, the more community impact they can have, the better that our LaPorte County grows and the healthier it becomes.
To me, Dunebrook's story, the importance of it, is being responsive to the community needs. Since I started here in 2006, we've been through the Great Recession. We've been through a pandemic that most of us had never lived through. We've had a couple of changes in presidents, a couple changes in governors. Society has changed. We've had social unrest. We've had the opioid epidemic. We've had other issues arise, and Dunebrook has been responsive, so that the core of what we do is preventing child abuse. But actually, we shape that to show people, to show families, to show the community that everything that we do that's positive, nurturing, and loving is preventing child abuse.
I'm just glad that Dunebrook has outlasted us.
Yeah, I am too.
And we had said we would know that we were a success if all of us could go away and Dunebrook continued, and it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
He and Cynthia and the others started talking about 1983, I believe. And they were both in the prosecutor's office. So that's where the germ started. And they saw the problem. And Lester left nothing unturned to find people to get involved and see if they could find a solution.
Very proud of it. The nicest part about it is that Dunebrook was built by the community. It was a group of people who came together, identified the need through United Way evaluations. And actually, many people know that Oprah Winfrey gave a challenge grant of $50,000, saying that if we could raise at least $150,000, either in cash or in kind, then she would give us the $50,000. That $50,000 challenge grant and the use of her name were awesome. But I really think that sometimes we forget the more awesome part of it was the communities pitching in together, realizing that children's issues are important to our community, and building Dunebrook.